Welcome to the Predictable B2B Success Podcast brought to you by Sproutwood.com. I'm Vinay Koshin. Our guest today is Joe Davy. Joe is an entrepreneur and investor, but he's also the co-founder and CEO of Bonsai since 2016. Bonsai is a virtual event platform for marketers, if I understand this correctly. Joe is also a board director for LegalPad. Now, what I found interesting, Joe, is that before all this, you were a general manager at Avalara, where you oversaw their small business and enterprise business unit. And really during your tenure, you were able to grow Avalara to over 1,500 employees, 16 global offices, and an annual recurring revenue of over 150 million. But that's just for listeners to get a taste of Joe's ability in growing businesses. And I think that fits in very nicely with the overall theme of the podcast, which is predictable B2B success. Joe, I'm curious, why give up all of that to start Bonsai? Was there a particular incident or event that triggered this?
First of all, thanks for having me, Vinay. And
pleasure.
Yeah, had a great experience at Avalara and was really lucky to work with some other terrific people there and collectively help to build something that has become a great enduring company and has helped tens of thousands of entrepreneurs and other businesses to run more efficiently. We love that, and it was a great story, and it was a great chapter in my career. The big idea behind Bonsai really ultimately came down to the way that people buy things is fundamentally changing. Mm-hmm. And today, about 60% of buyers make a purchase decision before they ever have an interaction with a sales team. And so what that means is that, if you're a marketer and you're still doing things the old school way of just driving top of funnel awareness and waiting for your sales team to drive the engagement and the close and renewal and all of that, then you're missing out on over half of your leads because half of the people are going to go to your competitors where they can be educated and engaged before they have to talk to your sales team. And so marketers these days have learned that now they have to adjust their approach. Sending emails, writing blog posts, running ads, those things are great and they're super important, but just doing those things isn't enough anymore. Now it's important for marketers to actually understand their customer journey, engage their customers, educate their customers, and ultimately optimize what they're doing based on the behaviors that they're seeing. And so that's really where Bonsai comes in. We see ourselves as powering this new generation of engagement marketing that's going to come to dominate in the next 10 or 20 years. And we think it's a new way of looking at marketing, looking at the responsibilities of marketing as no longer just being focused on the brand building and the top of funnel lead generation, but actually being focused on pipeline acceleration, on helping to create opportunities, on helping to form relationships at the earliest stages, and ultimately making sales' job easier, being a true partner for the sales team. And this is a big fundamental shift. And we saw this shift happen at Avalara in our own marketing teams and our own marketing efforts. And what I saw happening there, I realized that we were struggling with many of the fundamental pieces of this, especially on the event side. For virtual events, they've become such an essential part of how companies do this engagement marketing. But the existing virtual event products just aren't built for marketers. So Zoom, GoToWebinar, BlueJeans, or WebEx, whatever, they're not marketing tools. And the MarTech tools that are out there aren't really built for virtual events. And so there was a lot of challenge for us as we started to scale up these programs to figure out how do we do sales enablement really well? How do we do audience acquisition really well? How do we drive engagement? How do we do follow-up? How do we track the ROI and all of these pieces? So at Bonsai, that's what we're building, is the solution to help marketers make the transition from awareness-based marketing to engagement-based marketing, and give them the tools and the advice and the expertise to really make them successful at that.
I think it'd be helpful just to clarify what you mean by engagement marketing and maybe your definition of that.
Yeah, so our view of this is that there's been this kind of trend over the last 20 years as we've become a very digital driven marketing world to focus on awareness. And this is basically driving brand, driving traffic, driving top of funnel leads. And that's great. But again, as I said earlier, it's no longer enough. And so marketers today actually have to go one level deeper with the way that they're engaging the leads that they're driving with the customers that you have. Marketing is now responsible for not just for throwing people over the fence, but they're actually responsible for forming those relationships and educating the market. And if you're not doing it, your competitors are doing it. The way that people buy today, again, has changed, and people want to learn on their own before they go into a sales interaction. And if you're not educating your customers, your competitors will. They want to build relationships with the brand and get to know a brand and understand what the brand is about and what a company is about before they go into a sales interaction. Again, if you're not doing that, your competitors are. For us, engagement marketing is really about not what's happened in the last 10 or 20 years, but it's really about the future. It's about the next 10 or 20 years for marketers. And it's about making this transition from a focus on, how many clicks did we drive? How much traffic did we drive? How many leads did we drive? To how much revenue are we driving? How much engagement are we driving? How many opportunities and pipeline are we creating? And we think that the tools to support marketers in doing that, there's a variety of them, but we think virtual events are a big key piece of that. And that's where we see ourselves adding a lot of value.
So just to clarify, from what I'm hearing, engagement marketing would be defined as the types of marketing that further relationships and revenue.
That's right. Yeah. It's not just the top of funnel driving awareness of a company, but it's actually driving the relationship building and the education about the products and solutions in the brand so that customers can, self-educate, and so that they can build relationships with you, and so that you can better understand their customer journey and what they're searching for and how they're finding you, and doing that at scale.
How do you see virtual events being a key part of this process?
Virtual events are really unique in the sense that they're a form of gated content, but they're gated content that leads and customers actually want to engage with. Again, over the 10, 20 years in the awareness marketing paradigm, what did marketers do? They would create an ebook and they would put it online, and they would put a registration form in front of it, a lead capture form in front of it. So they would have form gated content, and that's what they would use to generate leads, and they'd generate those leads, and then they would hand them over. And that was a formula that worked for a long period of time. And the problem is people don't want to fill out those forms anymore because they know what's going to happen as soon as they fill out that form, that they're going to get bombarded, but they still want the content and they want the education. And virtual events, and especially things like webinars, but even larger events, are a great tool for leads and for customers, information to learn, to have a venue to ask questions, to build a relationship with somebody on the team, to understand the brand better, to understand the market trends better. And so it's a way of delivering thought leadership and education and relationship building, all these great things to your customers. And the difference between that and other forms of gated content is that people actually want to register for events. They have no problem registering for events. It's a totally normal customer behavior. Whereas form gating and ebook is not a normal user behavior. And so you're asking the user to do something unusual. Registering for an event is totally normal, and people are very accepting of that. And so we see, and we've seen in our own company, but we've also seen this more broadly, that it's just a much more effective tool for marketers to engage their leads and their customers. Customers are much more comfortable with it. Marketers get much better results from doing it, and ultimately, it makes them more money, and it helps them build better relationships with their customers. So it's really truly a win for everyone.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that when you're talking about virtual events, you're really not talking about these one-off, once-a-year type events, but something that is almost integral to building a community and the brand's platform. And that it should be episodic. Would that be the right way of thinking?
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think there are certainly most companies of at least of a certain size, they're going to do an annual conference. An annual conference can be a great tool for customer engagement and even potentially for leads. They're typically once a year. They're not a daily occurrence. We think the biggest opportunity for those kinds of conferences is actually to create evergreen content that you can then put on a platform like Bonsai and turn it into on-demand content that you can use to educate customers and build relationships 24/7. The key to making events work is to really make them a utility, something that you can run every day, every week, and that you can be generating a constant and steady stream of leads or engagement or pipeline acceleration from these assets. So we think of conferences as being the main challenge is that they take a lot of work. They're very big efforts. It's like basically having a corporate baby. They take 9 months to plan, and then it's 36 hours of really hard work and a lot of pain from everybody on the
Mhm.
team, and then it's over, and you feel really great about it afterwards for a little while. But then you go back and you actually look at the impact of it, and sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not there. Whereas the model that we really encourage companies to look at, how can you break that content down into something that you can use every day, every year, right? How can we make this useful? How can you generate leads or engage customers at 8 p.m. on a Saturday when they're sitting in front of their computer and something comes up and they're Googling around. So we think that doing those live sessions periodically throughout the year, that's really important. An average customer on our platform runs 18 events per year, but it could be as many as we have customers who run thousands. And we think that's great. We really think that the great thing about this kind of strategy is you can create very targeted and focused content that's specific to a market, that's specific to a use case, that's specific to a product that you're launching or a new feature. And so you can go very deep and you can really target the people that are specific to that use case or that product or that feature. And you can speak directly to them. And you don't have to set up a 3-day event that takes 9 months to plan. You can set up a 30-minute or 45-minute event, and that can be really successful. And then you can make it on demand, and you can continue generating leads for the rest of the year. So that's the model that we think is really going to be successful for more.
Brilliant. I'm curious, this has been quite a journey, I would assume, for yourself. What would you say would be your personal area of strength?
That's a great question. I started off as a software engineer, so I definitely look at things like an engineer, and I am
Mhm.
a problem solver and structured thinker. That's all a bit incidental, though. I think really my core strengths, or at least what's been important to me in building this company, has really just been the ability to build a great. I think we have a really tremendous team here that is really smart, very hardworking, very dedicated, loyal, and we're very values aligned. And we've been very clear from day one about what our values are. And we've treated it like a product, and we've evolved over time, and we've gotten more refined, and we've gotten better about it. But it's always been a priority for us to hire people that are values aligned and to hire people that we think are really the top people in the industry. If there's anything that we want to make sure we get, if I'm going to screw up anything, I think you get to screw up the strategy, you get to screw up the marketing campaign sometimes, you get to screw up products sometimes, but everything will be fine as long as you have the right people. So for us, that's been a big focus, just trying to get great people in.
That's a very different perspective from what I've heard from other folks. I'm also curious, what would you say that area of strength is something that businesses don't know but should?
An area of strength that businesses don't know, but they should.
No, is something in that area of strength that businesses should know but don't.
Well, so one concept that's been really, really great for us, and we've
Mhm.
been going deeper and deeper on this, is Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, wrote a book about a year or two ago, and in it he talks about a few of the things that are there, the ways that they operate at Netflix and how they do things differently. And we are shameless about stealing great ideas from great companies. We really fell in love with this idea of talent density, which is basically the ratio of high performing individuals. If you're looking at a typical performance review, you grade people 1 through 5. So, high performers would be people that are 4s and 5s versus the total number of people in the company. So basically, what percentage of your team are high performers?
Mhm.
And you want that ratio to be as high as you possibly can, and you want to constantly work to improve that. And so we've actually made that one of our 3 top corporate objectives for this year to increase talent density. We understand the importance of that, and we really share their belief at Netflix and at other companies that have adopted this, that the work experience of a company is defined by the quality of the people that you work with. And if you're working with a bunch of people that you don't respect or that you don't like very much, that you don't think are very hardworking, you're probably going to have a hard time there. You're probably not going to enjoy your work experience very much. Whereas no matter what else is going on, no matter whether it's chaos or whatever, but if you're working with people that are dedicated and smart and hardworking, you're going to have an okay work experience. You can really overcome a lot of adversity. We think about talent density as being the core metric that we track there, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in that to check out Reed's book. It's a great book.
I'll try and dig up that book and put a link in the show notes. That's very insightful. I love this idea of engagement marketing that you're talking about, because something I talk about quite often or try to highlight is that in growing businesses, we should create remarkable experiences, and by that, remark-worthy experiences. Now, creating events can, of course, be a challenge, as you pointed out. But I'm curious, when we're looking for engagement, we often, or at least most people often think of it as just interaction. And perhaps the number of questions they ask or the excitement of the responses that we get is an indicator of the level of engagement. Is that the right way to look at engagement, or can we break them down into, I guess, a few key areas in order to understand the types of engagement and what we should really be looking for or striving?
Sure. There's going to be a handful of factors, but the way that I think about it is there are things that happen pre an event, during an event, and then post an event. Pre an event, this is how is somebody finding you? What channel did they come through? Did they come through an ad? Did they come through an email? Were they an existing customer? Were they a lead? What kind of incentives have you used? Have you used gifting or other things like that to attract people to the event? You can track and understand their journey up to the event, how they found you and how they got to you. Then, their behavior during the event. Yes. Did they ask questions? Did they click on your link and fill out your request more information form? Did they download your handout? Did they stay for the whole thing? Were they engaged? Were they watching? Were they in the chat? That's a measure of engagement. But then ultimately, engagement really happens after the event, which is, did I have a meaningful next step with this audience? And what was my ratio? So that any individual, I think one of the big mistakes, one of the big breakdowns between sales and marketing is that they're sometimes speaking two different languages. One of them is speaking general relativity and one of them is speaking quantum physics, and they can't quite bridge that gap. And the marketers are thinking about things in terms of numbers and conversion rates, and sales team is thinking about things in terms of leads and people. And our mission as a company is to make marketing more human, to help marketers get past that view of everything as just a number, and actually to see the people and the stories and the customer journeys behind that, and create the relationships behind that. And so part of the way that shows up in the post event, did we end up having a meaningful sales interaction with this person? Or did this person end up actually downloading the handout that we gave? Or did this person actually, end up booking a follow-up with us? Or did they go on to engage with other pieces of content on our website? Things like that. So one of the things that we give customers the ability to do is actually, track that customer journey and then see where people have gone and what have they gone on to do after they had that event. So you can actually see, did this event drive an acceleration in my pipeline? Did it drive more opportunities? Ultimately, did it drive revenue for me? And that's the benchmark that ultimately that marketers need to care about. And our view is that helps marketers speak a bit of the same language with sales. So maybe they're never going to it's cats and dogs, so they're never going to completely see eye to eye. But if we can help bridge that gap a little bit, I think that would tremendously benefit the marketing and the sales work to have a little bit of a better ability to empathize and share language.
Just as I think about that, I'm thinking that there's a few mistakes or elements that people often get wrong as they try to put such a strategy together, one of which would be personalization, in my opinion. But I'd be curious to get your take on where you find people trip up as they try and put this together.
There are a ton of steps that go into producing an event. We see that a typical event starts 8 to 12 weeks prior to the event, with all the marketing coordination that goes on. And a typical marketer may be having to coordinate across 3 or 4 different silos in their organization to get access to the resources they need. To build their invite list, they got to go to their data team, or to set up reporting, they got to go to their Salesforce team, or they set up the registration page, they got to go to their marketing ops team. So I think marketers struggle in a number of ways. The big ones that we see are really not having a plan, not having a clear idea of what success looks like, and not working backwards from there to get a clear idea of how you're going to get to that success. I think a lot of marketers will say, geez, I produced this great event, but not very many people came. Why not? And I guess my advice would be that a great event is one that people want to come to. Great content is content that people want to access. So we have to leave our own biases on the doorstep, and we have to really be responsive to the customer. Ultimately, are people showing up to this? And are the people that are showing up to this actually converting into opportunities, pipeline, or revenue? And if they are, then let's double down on it. And if they're not, then let's be marketers and let's allocate our resources to the things that are working. I think the virtual events really aren't that different from many other marketing activities in terms of the common pitfalls. I think it's just a reminder of the fundamentals, right? Have a plan, define what success looks like, and be flexible and pivot to what your customer needs.
So for someone who's listening and going, engagement marketing sounds terrific, but I've already got a marketing strategy in place. Is it possible can we merge engagement marketing and that way of thinking into an existing marketing strategy, or is it a complete revamp?
The great thing about it is you can add in engagement without giving up anything else, right? You don't have to give up content. You don't have to give up email. You don't have to give up advertising. In fact, all of those tools can be used to support engagement marketing and make it more effective. You can use great advertising to drive leads through events and drive them. That's a new way to capture leads now. So it really is a purely additive strategy. And I think for marketers that are interested in exploring it, my advice would be just start small. We offer a great free trial of our webinar product Demio on our website. Go to bonsai.io. You can find Demio product there, and you can sign up for a free trial. It's really easy. We have a great onboarding. We'll show you how to do it. We'll actually give you an example of what a great event looks like. We have experts you can talk to for free that will help you with onboarding. And it can be a very low cost thing to get started. And then you can start small and you can scale it up. You don't have to come into it with a plan that says, I'm going to do 50 events a year. You can come in with a plan that says, let's try to do two or three this quarter, and let's see how it goes. And if it goes well, then let's keep doing them. I think, one of the other big mistakes that we see from marketers is probably just lack of consistency, right? So the great marketing programs, like anything, content isn't going to work, SEO isn't going to work, email isn't going to work, advertising isn't going to work if you try it for a week or try it for a month and then you cut it loose. Just like any other marketing program, it does take an investment of time. You have to get it right. You have to dial it. We think marketers need to be committed to that. You need to be willing to put 6 months into this. But the nice thing about it versus some of those other things is that you really can see instant results. We've seen customers that have plugged in Bonsai, and they've instantly seen the number of leads that they're generating double. We love stories like that, and ultimately that's why we're still in.
Sorry, I've got a lot of questions popping up in my head. I'd love to hear an example of maybe a client that has used engagement marketing and the kinds of results that they've seen. That would, I think, help us wrap our heads around the whole concept and what it kind of.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples is a customer of ours called Active Campaign, which you're probably familiar with. They're a great marketing automation company, and frankly, most of the marketing automation companies use Bonsai at some level. Most of the well-known ones, but we love the Active Campaign story because they started this a couple of years ago, back in 2019, I think. They weren't doing any engagement marketing at all. They didn't have anybody doing this in the whole company. And they've now scaled to, I think they have close to 100 users now using Bonsai to host their own events. Last year, they did over 1,000 events, and they engaged over 50,000 people through Bonsai. So it's just, I think it's an incredible example of year one. Yeah, they started pretty small, one single user, but over time they've seen the results and they've continued to scale it up. And now it's a whole marketing program for them. And we love that. We think it's a great example of the kind of success stories. And Active Campaign's done really well, by the way, during that time. They've scaled to now they've scaled to hundreds of employees, and they're a very large company now. So we're super proud that we've been able to support them in that success on their marketing side.
Just to clarify, Active Campaign was using Bonsai to engage their existing customers or prospects.
Yeah, it's been both. Yeah,
Right.
One of the things that's unique about their strategy has just been the number of people that they've deputized to go do events. So a lot of companies think of this as, okay, your event lives behind a walled garden. There's a team, or there's a person, and they're the person that does webinars. But what they've done is they've put this in the hands of almost 100 people across their organization. So if you're in a customer-facing role, or if you're in a marketing role, you've got access to this tool now that you can use as a part of your strategy. So again, it doesn't have to be this thing that lives in an ivory tower or that lives in a silo in the company. This is really something that every marketer can add in. So if you're focused on a particular channel, you don't have to say, oh, I just do enterprise, or I just do mid-market, or I just do SMB, or I just do this partner marketing or whatever, you can really say, okay, yeah, I can incorporate this into my strategy in any of those. In any of those.
If I'm understanding this correctly, a good way to think about engagement marketing is almost like micro events that a number of people could be involved in creating different flavors and facets of. And the idea of having a room full of people to make an event successful goes out the window, because it could just be maybe 3 or 5 people. Am I thinking along the right lines here?
That's totally right. Yeah, I think you don't have to have 1,000 or 5,000 people to make an event successful. Certainly you can, and that's great. And we love to see customers hosting big successful events, and we do. We have a lot of customers that do host big successful events. But yeah, a lot of the success of a strategy comes from consistency, and it may come from how do we consistently engage 20 people a week? How do we go run one huge event with 1,000 people that have a really good time, and then they go back home and we never hear from them again? Yep. So a lot of it really is about consistency, tracking results, understanding the journey, and just that continuous motion of optimizing.
So as a marketer, you almost have a role of orchestrating your subject matter experts in delivering the content or facilitating these events.
Or deputizing them. Yeah. Put the tools in their hands and let them do it for themselves. How many people in the company, every customer success manager or account manager has customers that they have relationships with, they have LinkedIn connections with, that they email with regularly. Give them the tool, give them the content, give them the framework, but let them go do it. Give them the tools to be successful, but let them go do it. Why why shouldn't they be able to?
One of the issues I think at least some businesses struggle with is coming up with topics. Now, for a large company that's grown over the years, they would certainly have enough data and experience to be able to speak to that with a degree of comfort. But for, say, a smaller company that likes the idea, wants to build that engagement, but is unsure as to the kinds of events or the topics that they should offer, what is a good way to do this? Because you were talking about the number of sales or downloads, etc., that happen post-event would be a good indicator, but I find that to be a lagging indicator. Is there a way to ensure that you're successful up front, as opposed to after the event?
I don't think there's any guarantees in life, but one thing you can do to make your life a lot easier is just go ask. My kind of hack for this would be, if I was going to start at something tomorrow and I wanted people to be interested in it, I would probably go on LinkedIn and run a poll, and I would just say, who's interested? What are you interested in? Here's 5 options for content that we might create. Are you interested in learning about A, B, C, D, E? And or is it something else? And see how people respond. And I think that if you just listen to your customers, you'll be really successful. And companies that get really good at listening to their customers ultimately usually tend to do well. Companies that get really bad at listening to their customers ultimately tend to not do very well in the long run. So, for a small business, you've really got nothing to lose. It's a very low cost way of doing it. That'd probably be my advice, be the easiest way to get it.
What about stories? It's a bit of a buzzword. It's been used for quite a while, a key part of marketing. But is there a way in which we could bring in stories that are relevant to our brand, as well as to the product or service that we're offering, in a way that doesn't sound like, oh, here's a story that we're going to tell you, but make it the seamless part of the event or the conversation?
I think this is a great example of going back to our mission of make marketing more human. There's nothing more human than stories. Yeah, we're genetically wired for stories. And I think this is one of the things that makes engagement different than awareness marketing. In awareness marketing, it's totally fine to just look at the dashboard and just look at the numbers. But in engagement marketing, you do have to think more about things like your content, and how do you tell a great story is one of the biggest questions. And we, again, just like I said before with the polls, that's a fundamental part of telling a good story, is figuring out what kind of stories people are interested in, right? Yeah. ABC, audience before content. So figure out what your audience cares about. Beyond that, I think you do have to, at some level, put together good stories. And this is one of the areas that marketing can really shine, right? You can go out and you can help create a framework, create slide decks or create videos or create canned frameworks for the rest of your organization Let's say, here's the story that we're telling about this new feature, why this matters, or this for this market or for this customer base. And then you can give those assets to your team as a way to support them so that they can go out and make them more effective storytellers. And the marketers, I think, frankly, are craving this. I think there's so many marketers that are deeply creative people and are great storytellers, actually, and they're stuck looking at spreadsheets all day long. And what if you could, instead of just look, you got to look at the spreadsheets, you got to know the numbers, there's no doubt about it. But what if you could also give marketers a tool to let them use that creativity and use it in a really positive way? And I think that's a great, example of what you can do with engagement marketing.
I'm also curious, as we look to scale these sorts of events and produce them consistently, there's a lot of data and information being generated. At a basic level, I suppose your platform, as well as other platforms, will be able to capture some of that. But in order to ensure that we're able to use it in an effective manner, and I'm thinking of large enterprises, a bit like ActiveCampaign or others, it can be a bit overwhelming, the amount of data that's coming at you. Do you recommend that we look at ways in which to automate and filter a lot of that data, and perhaps even think of having AI to highlight or filter out some of the key data points?
Absolutely. I think that understanding the customer journey is really key. And customer journey is more complex than ever before. And part of the reason that's so complex is because there's so many more digital touch points we can track and measure now than there ever have been. And so, yeah, we're very committed, and we think this is a big next step for us to be able to provide customers with an easy way to understand that journey, understand where events fall into that, how their impact pipeline and revenue and acceleration, and how people are finding them. And then ultimately, can we give you tools that make it easy to do the right thing with that data, to optimize the right campaigns or to optimize the channels that are working for you, things like that. We're very focused on that. And then, yeah, I think AI is going to be a big part of that. I also think just for most marketers, it's actually a more fundamental problem than AI. I think it's just a fundamental problem getting all the data in one place. That's the first stab at the problem, is how do we just collect and collate and clean data in a way that it can be presented to marketers, they can actually understand it and interpret it and trust the reliability and accuracy.
Just wondering, we've been talking about engagement marketing from an online perspective. I would be of the opinion that a lot of this could also be done offline, as an in-person, whether it be an event or otherwise. How do we need to think about bringing in the data from both these offline and online spheres?
The great thing about offline events is that they now have more of a digital footprint than they have in the past, because you typically have a digital registration. In some cases, you have digital check-in tools, and then you often have follow-up that's happening digitally by email. Things like gift cards are often digital now. I think there are better and better tools. And yeah, we're very focused on thinking about, at least, how do we provide tools that can help marketers enhance that in-person experience to make it more digital through better digitizing the lead capture process, or the attendance tracking process, or registration process, things like that. So, I think it's really a lot of it comes down to a data problem. I think in-person events have been going on since the beginning of time. They're literally the oldest form of human social, interaction. Probably is people used to gather for big events around a campfire or something. People instinctively want to do this. They want to gather. And whether that's intellectually and virtually, now that we have the capability to do that, or whether it's in person, and it's not going away. It's part of who we are as humans. But figuring out how we can make it more digital, make it a little bit more insightful for marketers, and give them better tools to make it easier for them. That's a big priority.
I'm just thinking that there's quite a bit that we could cover, and because it's quite a large topic, and there are many possibilities as we're talking about this. But is there an aspect, or perhaps aspects, that you feel doesn't get much talked about when we think of engagement marketing, that needs to be addressed or needs to be highlighted?
That's a great question. We really think that the missing piece of this is actually, there's actually not one kind of monolithic solution that works for engagement marketing. And that's been what's missing from engagement marketing for the last however many years that companies have been trying to do this, or vendors have been trying to do this. Again, when you think about the Zooms and GoToWebinars, the big challenge that companies have with engagement marketing is tying together all the little pieces that make this work. Marketing managers, again, they spend 8 to 12 weeks per campaign, and they may be running dozens of campaigns a year per person. And companies may be running thousands of campaigns. So you're talking about potentially thousands of weeks of work per company to do this. And it's a huge inefficiency. We estimate that an average $1 billion revenue company probably loses about $60 million a year in potential revenue just to the inefficiencies and complexities in this space. And tools don't work together. The solutions don't engage customers very well. There's no data to follow up and optimize and track performance. All these things cost you money. They cost you time. They cost you in complexity. And we think about reducing the complexity, making it easier, making it more efficient. Ultimately, by doing that, make it better performing and drive more revenue for marketers. I think big thing that we're focused on is just making things seamless and just making things really easy. So if you're a marketer, I would encourage you, especially if you're just getting started with this, just think about how to start small. Make it easy on yourself. Find tools that really work for you. If they use our tools, that's great. If you use somebody else's tools, that's great too. Probably better if you use ours for us, but probably better for you too. If you use somebody else's tools, that's okay. Like, just find a way to keep it simple at the beginning, because it is easy to get overwhelmed with the complexity here. And our goal over time is to add in features that make it more simple and make it more easy to do more complex.
I'm assuming that the pandemic played a large role in driving the thinking behind virtual events, at the very least, if not engagement marketing. What was your experience? Because I noticed you've acquired Demio, and so I'm assuming that you went on a bit of an acquisition spree as well. Could you speak about the effects of the pandemic?
I don't know if I would call it a spree. It felt a lot like a Tough Mudder, but yeah, we did. And for us, it really just came down to, we knew that our customers were going to need support in this area, and they were going to need a partner to help them figure it out. And we have gone all in on this because we just really believe in it. And we have seen the way that it benefits customers, and we've seen the way that it delivers business results and the way that it transforms our customers' businesses and brings new life into them. And we love that. And we just get off on it. It's a great way to run a business, knowing that the solutions we're giving customers, that they love it and that it really helps their business. So yeah, the COVID has been a big tailwind for us. To be honest, we saw the biggest part of that tailwind really happened early in the pandemic. And now everybody's at a point where this has been going for 2 years now. So everybody's at a point where the default is virtual. And I think a lot of things that were in person before have fully transitioned to virtual now. And they may never transition back, frankly, we'll see. So it has been, in some ways, the market has benefited us. In other ways, it's been really challenging. A lot of people don't know this, but at the onset of COVID, about 90% of our revenue was coming from customers that were actually doing in-person events. And that was a really scary moment as a small business, to look at the edge of a cliff and see that there was a long way down on the other side of that. And I'm really proud, again, going back to what I said earlier about our team, we were able to overcome that challenge. And ultimately, we have grown many times over the last 2 years. So we've been really fortunate, but we're definitely very aware that not everyone has been as fortunate as we are, and that luck has not been equally distributed here. We were very unlucky at the beginning. We made some decisions that made us more lucky in the middle, or put us in a position to get lucky, I guess I should say. And so we have, I think, maybe 50% hard work and 50% luck that the strategy that we tried actually worked out, because there were no guarantees. But we're very aware of that. And one of our 3 values is serving others. And what this means to us is, yes, serving each other as team members and serving our customers, but it also means serving our communities. We want to be, again, going back to our mission of making marketing more human, we want to be good humans, and we want to, recognize the humanity in the communities around us and the people around us. And it's very important for us when we're hiring people that they're involved in their communities. And I've been lucky to be involved with a couple of nonprofits over the years that have had great community impact. And fortunately, both were able to come through COVID okay. We've even had people do things as simple as, we do Bonsai rest days. And sometimes we'll give people $100 and we'll say, go do something fun today. And everybody in the whole company takes the day off. And we've had a few people, last time we did one of these, that they took the money, they went to the groceries, they bought a bunch of food with it, they cooked a bunch of meals, and they took it to their local homeless shelters or their local transitional housing facilities, and they just handed out food. And I thought that was so great. So we do have people here that have really big hearts, and we recognize how lucky we've been, and we do believe in and giving back to.
Terrific. I'm just wondering if it's okay with you. Could you give us a sense of the size of Bonsai?
Sure. We have about 100 people, and I think we have people in 16 different time zones now. We are quite a global company. We have thousands of customers. We have tens of millions in revenue. Won't give specific numbers, but we're definitely in a privileged position.
In the engagement marketing space, would you be the only one who's billed as a virtual platform for engagement marketing?
I think there's a lot of solutions that solve half of the problem, right? Yeah. So there's the Bright Talks, On24s, Zooms, GoToWebinars, WebExes, whatever. The competitors we have aren't a secret. Everybody knows who they are. I think where we differentiate ourselves is the laser focus that we have on marketing. And we don't think of marketing as a feature of our product. We think of marketing as our product. Our product is a MarTech product. Everything we do is about marketing. But we don't look at it as an afterthought or as one bullet point out of 10. We have marketing features. We think of it as we are a marketing feature. And so we just have a totally different perspective on it. Again, we're in that same arena with those other companies, and we're constantly aware of that. And frankly, we think many of them are great companies. We just think they're probably not well suited for marketers.
Mm-hmm. This has been terrific, Joe. To wrap things up, can I ask you, if you were listening to this episode, what would be your top takeaway?
My top takeaway, I guess, I would say a couple of things. Probably one, the power of the team and the importance of talent density in your building as you're building a business. This applies if you're a CEO, that's great, but also if you're just a marketing manager or if you're just starting your career. Think when you're figuring out what job to take, go to a place where you really respect the people that are there. Don't go to the place that's going to pay you the most money necessarily. Don't go to the place that has the biggest brand on the door. Go to the place where you really think the people there are your people. They're smart, hardworking people. And if you're the CEO, I would encourage CEOs to strive to make their businesses, to fill their businesses with people like that, because in my experience, that has been a game changer. So that's probably number one. And then, number two, if you're a marketer and you're watching this, I would encourage you to check out Bonsai. Go to our website, bonsai.io. We have a whole section on there on engagement marketing. It's filled with resources, content, blog posts, and yes, many webinars and many on-demand webinars that you can check out, podcasts that you can check out to educate yourself about this. And I just encourage people to get started. It can be really overwhelming, especially a lot of marketers, type A people. It can be really hard to take the first step until they feel like they've completed the whole puzzle. But I do encourage people to just think about how to start small, come up with a simple plan, a few bullet points, and just get started. Even if you're a big company, get started within your company. Be the first person to take a step out of the plane. And I think what you'll find is that you're going to get a really great reward on the other side of that.
And if listeners are curious and wanted to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
Yeah, people should go to our website. That's bonsai. If you're interested in connecting with me, go to my LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Joe Davy.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much, Joe. It's been very insightful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Vinay. It's been great talking with you.